I'm just sort of interested in how our reading patterns and interests develop with age, because one of the things I'm interested in and maybe even concerned by in our industry, particularly the manufacture of comic books, particularly superhero comic books, is the age range that we target.
Right.
Because I've often argued that the needs, emotional and character relating needs of a 35 or 40-year-old are different than a 10 or 15-year-old.
Absolutely.
And so I tend to write for myself when I was 14 as opposed to write for myself when I'm 40, just because I think my needs back then were different than they are now. But that's why I was just sort of curious how old you were back then. I wanted to ask you one other question actually about getting into the business, or a question. I don't even know if I've asked you about getting into the business. You were part of you got in through James Felder's sort of recruitment program.
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds like Marvel brainwashing me to say it that way. Yes, James Felder and Marc Powers, when they were both editors at Marvel, started this thing called the Stan-hattan Project. And James had gone to NYU, so he said, you know, we'd like to get some new writers. Why don't we contact, they have a dramatic writing department. And I like to tell the story. It's, I was very, very friendly with the secretary in our department, and we talked about comics a lot. She knew I like comics, and she learned to read through Superman comics. That was sort of how she, you know, that was her. She was a little bit older, and you know, that was her thing. She wanted to know what was going on in the books. So she said to me one day, "There's a letter sitting on the director's desk, and it's got Spider-Man on it, and I don't think it's gonna last there very long. You might want to check it out." And so I basically stole it and read it and saw what it was, and then graciously volunteered to run this program because I was a graduate assistant at NYU at the time. So the director was like, "Sure, sounds good," you know, and that was how it started. And I never really thought I was going to get work out of it. It just seemed like it would be a fun thing to do. And
was it?
Yeah, it was. It was totally fun. And we sort of the way they started the class was from dialogue back. So you basically, and it was cool because you'd get pages that were not published yet. So you're like, oh my God, I'm seeing like art that nobody's seen yet. You'd have to take them home, dialogue them, and then 2 days later, read them out to the group.
Did you have a plot with them, or you just had the pages?
I'm trying to remember. Sometimes you just literally got the pages. Sometimes you got a plot with them. And then we sort of worked backwards from there. Then it was, what if you had to plot a scene? Then it was, you know, getting all the way back. Eventually to essentially the Bible of a comic. You know, what would be the pitch for a comic to get it all the way through. So for me, it was lucky because I love character and I love dialogue. And the dialogue stuff, I was sort of able to show them right up front and kind of keep doing that. If we had gone in the other direction, it would have been a little later, you know, before I got to do dialogue stuff. And I was at NYU for screenwriting. So the sort of techniques and the visual storytelling, all that sort of stuff, obviously translates very quickly and easily for comics. So that program lasted for a couple of months, and then James called me up one day and asked me if I would do dialogue over Carl Kiesel was on. It was Fantastic Four 2099 was the book, and he had to jump off because he had to do something. So he had a book but no dialogue, and you know, of course, I flipped out and you know jumped around my apartment. So it was really cool, and from that point started this crazy career. So you know, I always have those guys to thank. James and I are still friends, and I see Marc once in a while. And we did it 2 years. So I graduated from it the first year. The second year, Brian Vaughn went through the program.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. So
it was like, oh, all right, we have a pretty good track record. That was okay.
Right.
And then we've tried to do it sort of more officially at NYU as a summer class, which I taught a couple times, and some other guys have taken it over. Eddie Berganz has taught it. Will Dennis has taught it. So it's very cool that it's sort of perpetuating. So
was that class? I'm not sure I realized that. Was that class really about sort of essentially recruiting new talent?
That was what they really were hoping to do that, and it wasn't any sort of. I think this is indicative of across industries. It was not a slam against anybody that they were working with. It was just they felt that they had X amount of bodies they could go to, and as you know, the sort of burnout rate is really high. when you're a warm body in comics, it's like, how fast can you write and how many books can you do? And I used to write 4 books a month, and with a special on the side or something like that, and at a pace that, was while I was going to school and right after getting married, all this sort of crazy stuff. So if you're a warm body, they need you because of the amount of product that they put out. So they just felt like they were always going to the same pool, and they just thought, well, this might be a way to think out the box a little bit, and that was what they got. So and there was another young woman who did some work at a Marvel Fanfare, but she only did a couple of issues. So, but it was cool. It was just great. I mean, and it's something I've always kept, and whenever I can. I mean, I'm not like the Gandhi of animation or anything, but if there's somebody that I can try a new script on when I've been in that position, I try to do that. Because that's how I was brought in. I'm very lucky in that, like a lot of guys, they're pounding the pavement, they're sending out scripts, they're doing all this kind of stuff, and I literally got this opportunity pop up. Although I always tell the stealing of the letter story, because it's, when guys say, how do you get in the business? It's like, well, you got to be ready for those opportunities when they pop up, and I don't recommend felonies, and I don't recommend stealing people's mail, but you got to be ready when it comes up. And then, because there have been plenty of times where I have not been ready. There was an opportunity to write a Deadpool movie a long time ago, and the only script that I had was like a romantic comedy. And I was like, here's my romantic comedy sample, and I did not get that job. After literally Avi Arad calling and saying, you got to write the Deadpool movie. And I'm like, this job is in the bag, and I didn't have the stuff to show, so the opportunity kind of whiffed by, So that's why I took it.